Welcome, everyone, and thank you for sharing with me a little bit about you. I'm Gia Lester, and I believe Mirurgia has already introduced me. I'm Brazilian, so there is an accent here. It is true. I'm not American by birth, but I am naturalized American. And I have been in this profession for 42 years. It's a long time. I've learned a lot in this process. And today we're going to be talking about a subject that is of great interest to me, ethics. But before anything, what is it? We're going to discuss what it is, what it isn't, a little bit about code of ethics, how we can verify where we are in breach of ethics or not, and when. Also, how to avoid situations that can be construed as a conflict of ethics. How easy or how difficult is it? Well, let's see. In reality, as interpreters, we do not have a voice. In actuality, we lend our voice to other people. And that means that if no one is speaking, the interpreter is considered to be obligated to also be silent, because we're only somebody else's voice. You have nothing to say. So if the person you are lending your voice to is not speaking, you don't speak. And that simple rule can actually avoid a lot of conflicts, especially in medical and court settings. You may not have experienced those yet, but as you grow in the profession, you will see that once in a while, what we do is so multifaceted that it lends our skills to situations that are unexpected. You might be visiting somebody in a hospital and someone may need your services and you feel bound to go and assist. In those cases, knowing a little bit about the ethics behind what you're trying to do can assist you in doing it the right way. And again, this issue about being silent and only speaking when the person we represent is speaking. How often is that true? Does it apply 100% of the time? Or are there situations when you are to speak out of turn? The thing is that there are many codes of ethics. Yes, there isn't one that encompasses everything. There are different associations. There are different countries. There are different scenarios where we work. And all of those issues interfere with what the codes of ethics will be telling you to do or not to do. But how many codes of ethics are there? There are people waiting to come in. Let me help them here, just a moment. Okay, they are coming in now. I apologize for that. So anyways, there are different codes of ethics. Each one of them applies to something a little bit different. So the National Association of Judiciary Translators and Interpreters will have a code of ethics that applies to court interpreters who work with lawyers, for example, and also to translators who work in the legal setting. Is that the only one? No. If you are a conference interpreter, there is an international association that is responsible for developing codes of ethics for us. And the National Council on Interpreters in Healthcare. They deal with medical interpreting. So does the IMIA, the International Medical Interpreters Association, and the Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreters, and the National Board of Certification for Medical Interpreters. They all deal with issues related to how we carry out our profession. The matter is, learning these skills is one thing. Learning how to use those skills is something different. It complements what you already have. Your professional baggage is enriched by that. But what exactly are codes of ethics? They teach us what our rights and responsibilities are. It is a professional tool that assists you in identifying those two rights and responsibilities, those two items, as they apply to you as the professional and as it applies to your client also. And sometimes when I say client, I might mean a direct client, and the situation can be different than from when you're working with an agency, an LSP, Language Service Provider, LSP. It may be a little bit different. And as I mentioned before, there are many different codes of ethics for whatever interpreting setting you find yourself in. Now, our role is not fixed. On the contrary, we must be flexible. So if you're dealing with medical interpreting, you become a member of the medical team. What does that mean exactly, Gio? Okay, I'll answer the question you didn't ask. If it's an emergency situation, you may not have time to be there asking questions to the patient, interpreting, but you might be able to grab the health bracelet the patient has and read it out to the nurse, for example. So the patient's not speaking, but you are speaking. Remember what I said before? Sometimes they say that if the person you're to speak for is not speaking, you're supposed to be quiet. In certain situations, it doesn't apply. There are situations in which you have to be an advocate for that patient. I'll give you a personal example. Here in Florida, where I'm located, there is a huge Cuban population. I went to a doctor with my patient who was Brazilian. As we arrived and the doctor entered, the doctor proceeded to speak in Spanish. I intervened. Not interfered, I intervened. We need to use the proper words. And I tell the doctor, excuse me, doctor, but the patient has a right to an interpreter who speaks his own language, and I am here. The doctor goes, oh, it's the same Spanish and Portuguese. I bet you he understands, don't you? Now, that's basically an abuse of power. The patient feels intimidated by the doctor because the doctor has an authority over the patient. The patient is not going to deny something the doctor has expressed to believe as true. So I just waited to see what the patient was going to say, and the patient unfortunately said, yes, I understand a little. I expected that, and I said, fine, I will remain in the room because it's his right to have me here. And if you need my services, I'll be ready to assist you. Good, thank you. So the doctor proceeds with the questions. your name, where does it hurt? Does it hurt a lot or a little? And then, he tells the patient to lay down on his back. But he says that in Spanish. And in Spanish, the way the doctor said, he basically said, lay down with your mouth facing up. We can now understand what he means. But he said that in Spanish, using words the patient didn't know. So immediately there was a breakdown in communication. And as a patient advocate, I stepped in and said, doctor, could you please repeat? Because the patient was looking at him with a question mark in his face. So the doctor repeated, I said it in Portuguese, and from then on, he used my services. So again, ethics. I cannot go to the doctor and fight with him and say, you must use my services. But I know the patient's rights. I know what my responsibilities are. And I can convey that knowledge to the doctor in a non-conflicting manner and avoid a situation from escalating. Another situation that is different is with a court interpreter. A court interpreter will be quiet, will be silent, will repeat exactly what the witness has said. He might once in a while say, the interpreter asks the court, and go on. The interpreter must clarify something and go on. He will identify himself as the interpreter. I want to know later who knows why the interpreter does that, okay? But he'll try not to interrupt the proceedings. He or she will intervene in a manner that is expected for someone who is working in that setting. It is very important for us to know how to do that. In the judiciary, the interpreter is not an advocate, but again, he's there to protect the report that the court interpreter is preparing. That has to be clean. That has to be clear. And that's our responsibility. If the judge cannot understand what's being said, if the lawyer cannot understand what's being said, if the interpreter cannot understand what's being said, the interpreter will have to speak up. Nowadays, we are doing a lot of that in Zoom. A lot of hearings are being held in Zoom and that platform, which creates problems for us. Not everyone has the right type of microphone available, and we cannot hear it well. So we do a lot of times have to say, the interpreter cannot hear clearly. Could you speak closer to the microphone? The interpreter cannot understand what's being said. Can you speak closer to the microphone? Or you may need to clarify a word that has been used by the deponent or the witness, and which is not part of your vocabulary. Now, why do you have to say the interpreter before saying anything? Well, Deja, would you be able to say why?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay. In a court setting, the interpreter will intervene, starting with, the interpreter would like to clarify. Why does the interpreter say that? The interpreter. If you don't know, it is fine.
I think I'll need more background to fully respond. Continue.
Okay. Anybody who would be able to answer that question other than Mirur here? Oh, somebody there, Kithra. Diga.
What that? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Yes, is it to clarify who is speaking just to not, disrupt the original message, just to ensure that, if the person that you're interpreting for is saying this, or this is something that the interpreter themselves need clarification on or something like that.
Exactly.
so would it be that you speak in the first person because you're speaking in the first person?
Exactly. You're speaking in the first person. So the court interpreter needs to take note. And when you speak and you just open your mouth and say it was blue, she will note it as the defendant or witness having said that. However, when you go, the interpreter needs to clarify, immediately on the record, she's going to put down the interpreter. Thank you very much, Kithra. Exactly that. To keep the record clean. That's your first responsibility in that setting. In order to do that, you need to understand, you need to know how to intervene, you need to be able to communicate with both the defendant, the lawyers, also the court. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration when you take that job. And I got something in my eye. Give me a moment. All right. I would like you to think in terms of your rights. What are your rights as interpreters? You can use the chat to write it down, that's fine. I would like each person to put down 2 rights. I am going to start with 2 of them. Let's say as a conference interpreter, I have the right to have drinking water in my booth, so I can keep my vocal cords hydrated. I also have the right to have a power outlet available for me to use my computer, connect my computer, charge my telephone. So those are 2 things. Anybody else can give me one more?
Food?
Food, that will be in your contract. So if you are hired by an LSP, in the contract, it might say that the client will provide meals. Very good. But if it's not in the contract, bring a snack. Very good. Okay, anybody else?
My own is in the chat, but the interpreter has the right to ensure that the client upholds the contract that was agreed upon.
Very good, yes. Right, okay, I see now. Kithra, the right to decline interpreting foul language. No, you don't have that right. Nope, nope, nope. It's not you speaking, it's the person
I am speaking.
You don't exist anymore.
Yes.
You don't exist anymore. So it's that other person. So, okay, food, the right to ensure the contract is held, okay. The right to decline being recorded. Yes and no. Okay. As a conference interpreter, you have to have that in the contract. There is a convention, it's called the Berne Convention from 1943, in which they decided that interpreting is for immediate consumption. I speak, you hear, done. However, some people want to record you. Why? They are planning on selling that as training tapes later, or they want to use it for direct sales to clients. So they're going to be making money on top of your voice. And it's your right to charge your copyrights, because the moment your voice is recorded, it gains a future. Remember what I said before? For immediate consumption, you speak, it's gone. Now it's recorded, so it remains. Therefore, you have a right to charge copyrights over that recording.
Is that the same as the interpreters have the right to their intellectual
Property?
property?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly. The right to be respected, absolutely. The right to work a specific time period, yes. Usually we charge an extra for overtime. But if you cannot work overtime, you can simply say that's not an option for me. That's it. Interpreter, as the interpreter, not the person who you are representing. Oh, yes. Okay, okay. Don't shoot the messenger, in other words, exactly. So that's the issue we were talking before with having to use foul language. A colleague of mine was in court, and the person who she was interpreting for just had a string of pearls, but they were all foul language. And she's going and signaling to the judge. She was so embarrassed. And we all laughed when he told us this story because we understand what's going on. However, she has a relationship with the judge. And all of a sudden, there she is facing the judge and saying a lot of foul language stuff. So yes, she felt very badly about that. Bathroom breaks, definitely. To be free from any type of harm or abuse, right? Access to conference material. And Marquita is trying to say something. Go ahead, Marquita. Unmute yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if I pressed something by mistake.
Oh, no, it's not Marquita then? Okay, it's the person
Okay.
who's behind under you.
Paula,
Let me
Paula.
see. Paula,
have-
sorry,
I have
Paula.
a question. If you're comfortable and since you're being very objective, and if it's totally understood that you're just interpreting
Mhm.
for the other person, can you use the foul language?
You have to. It's an obligation. It's not you speaking, Paula.
Exactly. So, so you don't have the right to decline to interpret the foul language.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, great.
And it's very nice that you both have brought this up because this applies to other situations. Let's say you are hired to interpret for something and find out in the middle of it that there is a religious element in it. And you don't agree with that religious element that is in that portion you are interpreting. You cannot decline providing that interpretation. You have to continue. Again, you're no longer a person, you're a voice. But then you have situations such as the interpreter for one of the Saudi heads of state, who, when the head of state was attacked by one of the diplomats in a meeting, attacked for him, not for us. The person said that in that country, there were a lot of human rights abuses, and that was not acceptable, and blah, 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 blah. The interpreter did not interpret that, because if he had, once he got home, he would be decapitated. Some people say the interpreter was wrong. I say, I'm not sure. History will answer that. But yeah. So Mirutia is telling me that in the Bahamas, you can say the witness is using foul language. That would not cut it in the United States. Give me a moment, please. In the United States, that would not be acceptable. So let's localize the information I am giving you. Apparently I was wrong and I apologize. So don't start saying foul stuff in the courtroom and say, Gio said for me to do it. Please don't. Now I know better. So the rules will change, not only in setting, but also in location. You need to be very, very aware of it. So if you are in the Bahamas interpreting for someone who's in the United States, you will have to use the foul language because that is part of the person's personality. That is part of the person's vocabulary, level of education. All of this is used by the judges here to create a persona for that individual. All the judge has in his or her hands is that the individual committed a crime, the type of crime, the name, where it happened. But now, hearing the individual, the judge can add another dimension to that person. So that is important. Miro is also saying you can ask the judge. If the person uses foul language, Your Honor, may the interpreter repeat? You can always ask the judge. That is a very good one. Thank you, Mirutia. So we talked about your rights as professionals. How about the rights of your clients? So what are the rights of your clients? I say, you signed the contract. That means you can do it. So you must be prepared. And prepared means you know the subject matter. And as Paula put down there, you need to be accurate. You need to be objective in your work. Good. What else? Exactly, Danilo. You need to use to give the client what he's expecting for the money he's paying. You've signed a contract. You cannot, in the middle of it, say you can't deliver. No longer acceptable. Unless the client left something out. For example, I went to an interpreting assignment at an anatomics lab. We had the first meeting. It was a nice lecture. We went to lunch. And as they were serving dessert, sorry, I have to laugh. It was interesting. As they were serving dessert, the MC says, once we are done here and you had your coffee, we're going to go down to work with the cadavers. Yes, that's what he said. I immediately called my manager and I said, listen, I've never worked with cadavers in my life. I have no idea what it's expecting me there. So please, if I pass out, understand it's not my fault. I wish I had been informed. I would have asked more questions and be prepared. But right now, I don't know. So in this situation, when they introduced an element that was unexpected for me, it's their responsibility. Okay. Both parties are to adhere to the agreement made and signed by both. Exactly. And that agreement did not mention cadavers Marquita. So they were in breach, not me. So exactly. So these are your rights. These are your responsibilities, not responsibilities, the rights of your client too. Okay. Now, we talked about rights. Let's talk about responsibilities. Can you think in terms of that? What are the responsibilities that both you have and the client has? What are those? Let's start with the professional. What are your responsibilities? Arrive on time, exactly. Punctuality is very important. Yes. Oh, yes, very good. Thank you. Everybody thinks that punctuality is important. Yes, it is. Dress professionally. Exactly. This is something that is not being respected in Zoom. Many colleagues of mine have appeared in t-shirts, for example. And I have worked with lawyers who appear on shorts. So decorum is important. What else? Personal hygiene, especially if you're working in person. Personal hygiene is absolutely important. You need to be aware of that. Anything else? How about if you're working in a booth and you break something in there? Do you have the right to break the equipment? Okay. Responsibility, while you answer me, not to stand out or overshadow the client. Yes, sometimes some people don't realize that. Ensure the client's always at ease. Very good. To inform of any equipment malfunction, and no, you don't have the right to break the equipment. Doesn't matter how mad you get, that doesn't belong to you. That has a value, and you're responsible for maintaining it exactly as you received it. Yes. Or have it replaced, but not break it. You need to remain neutral when, depending on the setting, in a conference, yes. Keep your ideas and emotions and opinions to yourself. Stay in check. Very, very, very important.
Sorry.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I had another point on that, to inform a function. Like for the example you said, when you couldn't hear the individual speaking clearly or they was talking too low, like I meant to inform, to say that, to inform the person speaking that you can't hear them clearly, to speak up so that you're able to interpret what they're saying for the audience.
Right. And sometimes when you are in a conference setting, what you do is ask your booth mate, your colleague, to go and talk to the technician, because the technician can then go and speak with somebody after he checks if his microphone is working properly. It has happened with us that the individual disconnected the cable that connected the microphone to the transmitter by accident, by sitting down and getting up. So the technician went over there, adjusted it, no problem. So these are situations that happen. And the client's responsibilities? A fair contract. I've had situations in which the client wanted me to work overtime and not charge for it. No, I have the right to my overtime charges. Okay. Do not take a job you know you're not prepared for. It's an advantage to the client. That's one of your responsibilities. I'm talking about the client now, but thank you, Marquita. So the client has the responsibility of offering you a fair contract. And how about that recording issue we spoke about before? We know they don't have the right to record you. If they want to record you, what's their responsibility?
To ask you first.
Exactly. Ask for permission to record you. Very good. And we just talked a little bit about equipment. Is the client responsible for providing you with adequate and properly working equipment? Oh, yes, it is their responsibility. Now, mind you, we are in a new reality. Many professionals are working from home like I am right now. So I am responsible for providing my own equipment.
Yeah.
there has been a change. I have a special camera. When I'm needed to be on camera, I will do so properly. I also have a headset that is a professional grade headset with noise canceling capabilities and a boom mic that is unidirectional. So it only hears me. And when I'm not using that, I have a new piece of equipment I got, which is this microphone, which is a very good. It's almost 2 feet away from me, and it picks up my voice quite well. Paul is asking a question. What happens if there is an internet malfunction or equipment malfunction on the part of the interpreter? That's one of the reasons why we work in dual. We don't work alone. The reason is because in a situation like that, your colleague is listening to you, will see you dropped and will take over. Many individuals are now, corporations too, trying to work with only one interpreter. And when something like that happens, they are in trouble. I'm not responsible for the maintenance of the internet connections in my home. I rent it. The other day, they were working my neighbors and they dropped my connection. I was watching a movie, there was no problem. But if I had been working, it would have been a problem for me. The other option you have, because this is your responsibility to provide the client what the client asked for, the other option you have is to make sure you have a hotspot enabled on your cell phone, and you can then use your cell phone to continue interpreting. That happened to me 3 weeks ago. I was doing a job with the courts, and for some reason, I was having issues with their connection. My equipment and their equipment couldn't talk. So I said, don't worry, give me 2 minutes, please. And they said, okay, Gio. And I went on my phone, got back into the meeting and continued interpreting from my telephone. Because my telephone does not use my Wi-Fi, use the cell connection, which is a separate tower, separate system. And I was able to work with them that way. So we cannot simply say, oh, my internet dropped. No, it's your responsibility to make sure you have at least another option. Many companies that provide remote interpreting services ask for the interpreters to have 2 separate accounts, 2 separate internet service providers. That can be an issue here where I live because they have territories. So there is only one in my area. So having 2 accounts with the same service provider, when they have a problem, both my accounts will be dead. But I have colleagues who live in the northern part of the country, and they have an account with company A and another account with company B. And they are able to switch in case of problems, especially in the winter, because of the storms. So sometimes one has underground wiring and the other one has above ground wiring. So the above ground wiring goes down, they can use the underground wiring service. Very good, Paula. Paula is using her telephone to join us today because there is no internet in her house. If you go to AIC, it does talk about in Article 2, Item C. I have it on the links inside Canvas. You can take a look at it. It does talk about the fact that any contract for the employment of a member of the association, a member of AIC, must stipulate that interpretation is intended solely for immediate audition in the conference room. No recording, not even by those listening in, is allowed. Okay, unless there is an agreement regarding the copyrights, the interpreter can sell that agreement. Sell the copyrights. Can be a percentage of the fee, can be a fixed number. Okay, and what are the responsibilities of the client? Oh no, this is what we just discussed, the responsibilities of the client, which is to be professional as well. So we continue now with more responsibilities for the clients. Tell me, what else can we say about the client? Anything else? You think we covered everything? Okay, so let's go on. I want to talk to you about a situation here. And I know you know the answer for that one, but I want you to pay attention because it can be a very subtle situation. You, Paula, and I are interpreting at a conference. And you go to break, and when you come back, I say, oh, listen, the technician said we should continue interpreting even if nobody's listening. Why would the technician say that?
Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Okay. You come back from your break and your booth mate tells you, look, the technician told us to continue interpreting, even if no one is listening.
The question is what?
Why? Why would the technician want you to continue interpreting if no one is listening?
Because you were paid to do a job.
No, because he or she is recording you and wants there to be a continuation.
Exactly.
He possibly wants to sell your stuff.
Exactly. Exactly that. Many times.
But you've given permission to be recorded.
No. Hold on. If you have been commissioned to be recorded, if there is an agreement, oh yes, definitely. Go ahead. Continue.
So how do you know if there's nobody listening? So there's like a ratings or something?
Well, there are a few ways of doing that. Usually people who are listening to you, they congregate in a certain area, so you can always stick your head, do the neck test to see. Another way of doing it is by very politely stating in your microphone, those who are listening to me, please raise your hands. And they will raise their hand, and you know they're listening. If they don't raise their hand, they are not listening.
But does it matter who's listening? If you're hired by the client and somebody's speaking and you're interpreting, you're not representing the people who are listening. If everybody walks out of the room, should you not continue on until your client says your services aren't needed? Like you're there to
abide by the time frame of the contract, because yes, you still was hired to do a specific job.
you're not there to please the audience. You're there to.
I'm there for the audience. I'm sorry. I'm there for the audience.
The client has hired you.
The client hired me to serve their audience.
Or to serve the person who's speaking.
No, not necessarily. The person can continue speaking without a problem. I'm not helping him or her. I'm helping those who are listening to understand. The issue is not whether I'm going to continue speaking or not. The issue that has been raised is that the client is recording me. I need to find out if that is true or not. I need to contact the technician and ask, excuse me, are we being recorded? And if he says yes, you go to the person who hired you usually would be the head of interpreting services in the company, and you say, there are no provisions for recording in the contract, and they are recording us. Could you please do something about it? And that's all. Remember, I've been in this game for 42 years. And many times, especially when it's the end of the day, everybody's so tired. And the people you're interpreting for walk out. That's an opportunity for you to relax your vocal cords and go back the next day doing much better. Or to do research. You're still working there, you're still doing things for them, but not necessarily allowing them to record you when they did not make provisions in the contract for that. So it doesn't mean you stop. It means that you need to verify what's going on. Many times, the technician comes to me and says, no one is listening to Portuguese. Don't worry about it. And I can relax. So these are things you need to take into account. Are we good?
Yes,
Okay.
it's just,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to interpret and you're trying to verify. How does that work in simultaneous interpretation when you're trying to verify something and you're feeling like the client is expecting you to interpret, but the technician's telling you not to interpret? Where is your loyalty? Where is your responsibility? To whom?
Okay. The technician is part of the company that hired me,
Right.
not the one giving the conference, holding the conference.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
let's say Coca-Cola hired Mirurgia to provide interpreting services. So
Right.
Mirurgia's technician comes to me and says, Gio, don't worry, rest your vocal cords. There's nobody listening to Portuguese. I'll stop.
Okay. Clear.
Okay. I need to make sure I get the message from the right person.
Right.
So if I say, is anybody listening? Please raise your hand. And nobody raises his or her hand, I ask my colleague, can you go check if there's anyone listening? And he or she will go and check. I won't just stop. I have to verify. Now, we discussed about dressing before. Okay? And it is very true that the way you present yourself will convey confidence to your client. It will convey, even to the person who is going to be listening to you, will convey also that trustworthiness. And this is very, very important. I just want to backtrack a little. When I say that you don't continue interpreting, it doesn't mean you leave the room or anything like that. You're going to stay in there. You're going to do research for a vocabulary so you do better. You're going to stay there because in the middle of it, somebody might put the headpiece on and you need to continue interpreting from that point on. So you are still there. You're still working, not speaking, but you're still doing some of the other cognitive roles you are supposed to be doing as an interpreter. Okay. So back to how to dress. The reason why we dress a certain way, is to convey a certain message. I have clients who demand that we dress specifically in one color or another because it's their color, their brand color. Okay, so interpreters are usually hired by agencies and they have their own sets of rules. And you need to follow those. But there are moments when they conflict with who you are. in terms of availability. They want you to wear all white. You don't have an all white outfit. So you're going to go out and buy an all white outfit or borrow from somebody. So you need to pay attention to those little details so that you conform to what is expected of you. And make sure that you are a nice person for them to work with. So please don't go saying, are you crazy? Why am I going to spend money buying a white outfit? No. You say, oh, do you have any idea where I can get one that's not too expensive? That's you telling the person you're willing to accommodate their needs. Even though you don't have it right now, you're willing to go and accommodate that. Why is that important? Marketability. It is telling them you're willing to do something for them, and in exchange, they are willing to hire you back in another instance. Some rules include not only how to dress, but also whether you can mingle with the clients or not. Many companies do not want you to mingle with the clients during break. They have a special room where you're supposed to go and stay during the breaks. They even have a special room for lunch, a resting area for the interpreters, because they do not want the interpreters mingling with the clients. And they may even extend that to the exhibit hall if you're in a trade show. Interpreters are not welcome in the exhibit hall, so you can't go there. That's where they usually have free things they give away, so they don't want you taking those. These are things that should be stipulated in the contract, because we can't guess. It varies from one to the other. Therefore, they are supposed to let you know what is going to happen. Now, let's take a break here from me speaking, and I want you to speak now. Again, so this is a situation here related to medical interpreting. So for the recording, I'm going to read it. Patient, doctor, and interpreter, just sorry for the typo, leave the examining room together. A man approaches them and asks, is everything okay? And the interpreter answers, oh, congratulations, you're going to be a dad. Is that right? Is that wrong? Is the interpreter okay doing that?
It's wrong.
It's
Wrong.
wrong. Yes,
Wrong.
wrong.
Very
Okay.
wrong.
Okay, why is that wrong? Tell me.
Because it's not you're there as the voice of the patient, it's not your business to give information out that it's confidential.
You're not the doctor. You're not the patient.
doctor, right?
Exactly. Very good. Now, this is a real situation that actually happened in New Mexico. And the husband had been away in the military service for 1.5 years, and his wife was 3 months pregnant. That created a huge problem.
Yes.
Problems.
Yeah, a huge problem. And that is called confidentiality, knowing what to say, what not to say. It's another one of our responsibilities. Now, the deponent does not understand the question and asks, can you repeat that, please? And the interpreter goes ahead and repeats it. Is the interpreter right or wrong?
Wrong.
Okay, why?
Because you have to interpret it to the person he's asking it of and say, can you repeat the question?
Well, but he asked to you. He looked at you and said, can you repeat that, please?
Do you not need to tell the person then what you're doing so they know you're not having a private conversation with the deponent?
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so very much. That's exactly the situation. You're not having a private conversation. You're not there to engage with that individual directly. That's why he has a lawyer. My daughter says, I am like a magic telephone. I hear in one language, I speak in another. A magic telephone has no personality, has no brain, has no nothing. So she's not right. But anyways, this is basically the situation we find ourselves in. So when the person asks me, there are two things happening there. Number one, I am the one closest to him or her. So he will or she will immediately come to me. I'm the one who's speaking the language. They feel comfortable with me. But was the question directed to me? Me, the interpreter? I don't even ask. I go to the lawyer and say, I did not understand what you said. Could you please repeat? I'm not there as a person. Nothing is asked of me. Unless they say, Madam Interpreter, would you please? And that has happened many times. So yes, very good. The interpreter should not speak out of turn.
Sorry, so you're saying if they do ask to repeat, they have to call out the interpreter by name.
The deponent should speak directly to his lawyer, not me, not the interpreter.
Okay.
So if the deponent asks a question, I will repeat the question to the lawyer. If the deponent says to me, I love your glasses, I will repeat, I love your glasses. And the lawyer is going to go, I'm sorry, what is this about?
Right.
I'm sorry. He said that.
What about if the person says, Madam or Miss Interpreter, I did not hear you. Can you say to the lawyer, he said he did not hear me.
Mhm.
Going to repeat
Yes.
what I said.
In this case, which has happened, I say, this is the interpreter. The deponent has informed me that he did not understand what I said and has asked me to repeat.
Right.
And the lawyer is going to tell me, please repeat or no.
Okay.
Madam Court Reporter, can you please read it back? Because the court reporter has everything down and the court reporter can repeat the question.
Okay.
Or even me, I can actually say, the interpreter asks for the question to be repeated. After explaining the first part, the gentleman didn't understand, asked me to repeat. I asked the court reporter if the court reporter would be so kind as to repeat the question. Yes, it is possible. Thank you. So now you're at a conference and one of the speakers comes to you and gives you a business card. What do?
You can't accept it. It's another form of getting a business, correct?
But you're not there representing yourself.
Right. Right.
The company
not
that
giving you-
hired you might feel that you're interfering with their business.
Yes.
So if it's a conference and you're interpreting, and you're interpreting for a speaker into your language, and let's say the speaker is someone that travels, so they're giving you their card, so when they go somewhere else, they may be able to hire you. So you cannot do that?
No, because you made contact to him through a third party. That third party is your contact, not you. So you might say, oh, thank you so very much. Let's go talk to Mirurhia. She would be very interested in getting your card.
Yes. Got it. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
I thought you were meaning like if you were an independent worker, you couldn't take a
No,
card.
independent worker, yes, I'm taking out the business cards.
Okay, all right. So you mean like if you're contracted under someone?
Exactly.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Everything is relative. You need to put it into context in order to fully understand and provide the correct answer. So thank you very much for clarifying that. If I am hired by a third company, I cannot interact directly with the speaker or the organizer of the event in order to garner business from them. No, I should not. That would be unethical.
Has it happened where the client has the person speaking, say they're pleased, or someone in the audience is pleased with your interpreting, goes to the client and says, where did you hire this person? I'm interested. And the client gives them a referral and lets you know that's okay, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. That has happened too a few times. So we
Again.
already know the answer to this next one, right?
Interpreter hired by an agency.
That's a
So
no.
that's definitely a no-no.
No.
And this one too.
Hired by- You confront the client with whom you have the contract.
Okay, so let's say, why don't I go to the AV technician? Tell me.
Because maybe he might be recording on behalf of because he was told to by the client. So
Miro here has her hands up.
I don't know.
Yes, but this is not in reference to this question.
Hmm,
Can everybody hear me?
yes.
Yes, it was in reference to when someone is trying to get your attention and you're working for a third party. And one of the attendees asked if something similar has happened. I recall an incident at one of the conferences here. And our team was providing language services. Actually, Gio was in charge of the Brazilian Portuguese team. I was handling the
Ah.
Spanish team.
The golden
And the
package.
equipment totally malfunctioned.
Oh my.
Now, we did not provide equipment rental. The client decided to go with the AV's companies, with the AV company's equipment. And in the middle of the conference, their equipment malfunctioned. They hired our technicians to do the technical part, and our technician found out what was wrong, but they needed a break to fix it. So the client somehow was informed that our team owns equipment. But see, you have to consider that at the end of the day, the client will leave the country and I have to stay, or we have to stay as a team. And we are still language services providers to various audiovisual companies. So at that point, you have to decide, where does your loyalty lie? Are you going to be the biggest person in the room, or you're going to be selfish and take the business for yourself?
Yeah, that's a completely different situation.
We had a lot of equipment available because we had just ordered more equipment, including theirs, since we were also bidding for the contract. But we had no business offering the services after the client had made their own decision. So when I was pulled out with the request of providing the equipment, I told the client that unfortunately our equipment is no longer available. Since they declined our offer, we engaged the equipment at another conference that is taking place simultaneously with this one. But we would be glad to request a break to allow our technicians to find a solution so that we can continue the conference.
Exactly.
And that's what we did. It was terrible because I remember Gio and I interpreting, and these people could not hear a word. And then the client tried to claim that we were not interpreting. but the reality is that the equipment malfunctioned. So we had two things to do. We had to save our contract with the audiovisual company. And then we also had to save our professional reputation. So we just offered the free technical services. We did not charge for it. And our technicians found a quick solution. And we continue the contract. And today we have a beautiful relationship with that audiovisual company that from that day on learned that when they do not have proper technical support, they prefer to hire our equipment instead. Like right now, literally, there's equipment right here at the office that was delivered from that company because they had a similar situation, and to avoid that from happening, they decided to use our equipment instead.
Mhm.
And that was it. So
Yeah.
you always have to honor first your commitment to who believed in you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So if I am an independent contractor and I am there and there is a situation like the student just described, I don't have a problem. But if I am there hired by another person to provide services, just like Metered Here was hired by the AV company to provide services, she cannot go and gouge that client, take the client away. Very good. Ethics is something very interesting, too many fine lines. But the question now is, the interpreter who was hired by an agency finds out she's being recorded and goes take it out with the AV technician. Is she right? Is she wrong? And why?
I'd say that she or he is not correct because, as I would have learned the other day, there is what we call a conference manager.
Mhm.
Correct me. They are to speak to the conference manager and have that situation resolved, but to leave the booth to go and deal with the matter directly would be just wrong, in my
Exactly.
humble opinion.
You're right. You're absolutely right. The AV technician all he does is press a button to record. Somebody has to tell him to press the button. He doesn't decide on his own to do it. So the AV technician has no bearing on this issue whatsoever. You're barking up the wrong tree.
Mhm.
You're burning yourself. You're creating a problem. The AV technician is going to remember, oh, that interpreter, she's so aggressive. She came here and, attacked me because I did what the client wanted. And then you get a reputation. So it's very important to know the chain of command in order to not to burn your bridges. So pay attention to who you're dealing with and when and how. Do you have any questions for me? We have a few minutes to go for your questions, so don't hurry.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Paula.
No, I'm thinking you covered a lot. As we went along, you answered a lot of the questions, which is great. In the Bahamas and in the Caribbean, is the International Cultural Institute the agency that hires interpreters for events and conferences?
That's a question for Metered Here. Your microphone is.
Yes. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, BahamasTranslators is actually the language team for International Culture Limited. The company is International Culture Limited. The International Culture Institute is an academic initiative created by Gio Lester, Sismara Sanchez, and myself, as we decided to help the region to get accredited, certified, or whatever we're going to be calling it in the future. So to provide professional development for persons interested in their profession. So who hires you is the International Culture Limited, but the trade name of for the language services is the BahamasTranslators. So When you sign a contract to be an interpreter for a conference or whatever service you are hired for, you would see that on one side, International Culture Limited, hereinafter the Bahamas Translators. So because we do have other departments, like the sound department, the technical department, they're the different wings. So if you work for a translation project, in the future, we're going to do the translation certification program, then you're hired by ICL, Bahamas Translators team. If you're a technician, then you're hired by ICL, whatever technical team, that name, which is not relevant at this point. So it's the brand name that will hire you is the Bahamas Translators.
And is it exclusive, or I mean, I have a long way to go. I'm just curious. Is it exclusive, or can somebody from somewhere come and say, I've heard about you. I'd like you to interpret for this person, or in a conference, or in a meeting, or in a negotiation, whatever the case may be, and they contact you directly. Is that wrong?
No, it's not wrong. Normally we receive an email with a request. We normally have, and this is something I learned from a booklet that Gio and her colleagues wrote, an inquisitive translator, good news. Remember Gio?
Yes.
So an inquisitive interpreter, also good news. We ask a lot of questions like, which country is going to be represented, how many participants, what's the venue? Because we may offer technical services as well, so we have an idea of the technical requirement of each venue locally. And if it's abroad, then we will liaise with the AV house or in-house or so. The reason we ask which countries are represented, because we want to find the persons with the best accent, the most suitable accent for or knowledge, or we want to make guests feel welcome. So then
may I repeat the question, because I think I maybe didn't. The interpreters, do they register with you so that we would not accept an assignment outside of your domain? Is my question.
Okay.
Is it exclusive?
I was going there.
Oh, sorry.
I was going there. I was just starting with the client process, and then I'm going to go with the interpreter process. Now, in the case that an interpreter liaise with us requesting assistance, then definitely we will more than likely ensure that that interpreter is part of the cohort that will work the conference. However, we normally do auditions, right? If we get last minute conferences and I already know who is suitable for that, we don't really have time to go through auditions, then we will have to do so. But generally, which happens recently, Keitra was a part of that, for the job for the Office of the Prime Minister, we did an audition, and the most suitable candidates, worked the conference. Why? Because at the last minute, I was called to work at another setting, and somebody else had to replace me. So that means we had the number one selected person, and then we had a number 2 and 3 and what's not. So they were used to fill in gaps based on their time of availability. So
thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Miru. Paula, your question raises another issue. So let's say that I did a work with Miru here, as she just discussed here, with the client that had all the issues with the AV equipment. And the client calls me and asks me to participate in another conference that he is doing there in the Bahamas again. Can I go and accept that job? I mean, the client came directly to me.
No, I think that would be unethical.
Exactly, because
But
I
I'm not
got
talking-
that contact. Yeah, I got that contact through Miru here.
Right, but I'm not
Therefore-
talking about that at all. I'm
No,
talking.
I understand.
Yeah, but I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, if I meet someone through someone I know that has nothing to do with the entity, and they say to me, oh, we're doing a negotiation with a client from France, and I know you speak French, and you'd mentioned you do interpreting. Would you be interested in coming to the meeting? Do I?
Yes, you can
report
go.
that- Do I report that to you and say I'm not comfortable?
No,
Right. Okay.
no.
So okay. But if I wanted a team, if I wanted another person with me,
You can
would
call
I-
anybody you want. Understand. Okay. I thought Mirut here had answered your question, and I was putting another scenario there.
Right. and
So,
they're all good to know. So
yes, no, definitely. So here we go. I live in the Bahamas, and John Paul comes and says, "Hey, Jill, I'm gonna need a interpreter for French." I had never met John Paul in my life.
right.
And he came to me because Antoine, a colleague of mine, who is not an interpreter, said, "Gio can do that." So yes, I'll go work with him. And he
Okay.
says, "It's gonna be like 2 days. Do you think you can do it by yourself?" I said, no. Our interpreter can only work 1 hour. Let me call Angelique to help me. And I can contact Angelique and do that for him. Now,
Right.
the questions comes regarding equipment. Do you have the equipment required to do that? Do you have the knowledge required to provide the service? Remember what you're talking about, rights and responsibilities before?
Correct.
That's where those issues come in,
Right.
okay?
Talking
So
about
yes, you can do the job, definitely. You
Right.
can accept the job, but however, you need to take into consideration the requirements of the assignment. And
Correct.
then you may go to Mirut here, because you know she has the equipment, and say, "Hey, Mirut here, I need to rent 1 transmitter and 20 receivers. How much is it?" She doesn't need to know what it is for.
Right.
You didn't get her client, you didn't take the client away from her, and just by chance, you're giving her business too.
Right.
Well, we already had a similar scenario. I recall we did an event for FedEx, and Gio was approached in the US to work in the Bahamas.
Mhm.
And so it was Portuguese, and then it was Spanish. So Gio reached out to me and said, "Hey, Miru, look, this looks like it requires more than what I have available right here in the US. I'm gonna give the client your contact, and I'm gonna need you to organize the conference, and then we could go from there." So we did that. And of course, she was in charge of the Portuguese team. So she had to select, we had an agreement. Okay, you select who you want to work with, and then you select, and these are the terms for the client, and then we go from there. So we had our internal agreement.
Yeah.
We agreed on whatever financial internal portions, and that's how you do the work. Now, the fact that you're learning, you are already paying for a course at the BahamasTranslators. That does not mean that you have to work only for the BahamasTranslators. We are equipping you to launch you, as strange as it may seem. We are not training you to keep your talents harbored in our domain. If we were to do that, we would have given you this training free of charge, and you would have been bound by a contract saying that between now and whatever else, you have to work for us only because we are giving you free training. So the rationale behind creating a fee is that, you went to school, you did your training, you just have to make sure you pass your exam, which is going to be like board style. And once you get your certificate, if somebody hires you individually, it's up to you to decide, I am sufficiently trained to accept this job on my own, or let me get some help.
Yeah, I need to make an observation there. The client who approached me in the United States was a US representative of FedEx. The client who approached Miru in the Bahamas was not from the US. And that client gave my name to this other person. So I kind of could have gone on my own, but I felt conflicted because he would not have known about me if Mirurgia had not opened that door. So in my head, it made sense for me to go to Mirurgia. Plus, it was going to be in the Bahamas. Guess what? She had everything they needed. She was the right person. And that is, you know, the type of thing you need to take into consideration when you are dealing, when you become a business.
Correct. Clear.
Any other questions? How about you have an assignment and you have no documents in front of you, no information whatsoever related to that event. You were hired by an agency. What do? Do you go straight to the client and say, listen, they haven't given me the material, I am going to pull out? You go to the agency and ask, hey, where are my documents? What do you do and why?
I have a question with the scenario. Is this something that you were given within time that you could have asked for the materials and you asked for it and you were and they never received, or you waited until last minute to ask for the materials?
I hope that the contract is stated you need to receive the materials a minimum of 3 weeks prior to the event. And it hasn't come.
Okay. So if it is stated in the contract and you don't receive it, then that's a breach of the contract from the client.
Yeah.
So then the consequences would come, that is whatever was inside the agreement. So the agreement should state, if materials aren't provided to me, or, you know, I guess knowledge of what is being spoken about, then I cannot perform my duties.
Mm-hmm.
So you should refer to the contract.
Always. Thank you. Paula, you're going to say something? Who was speaking?
Contract come from the agency, since the agency hired you, then should you go to the agency first?
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. If my contract is straight with the client, I'll go to the client. If my contract is with the agency, I'll go with the agency.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that have happened nowadays, especially because of the internet and the remote simultaneous interpreting issues, is that companies are taking a long time to send you material, or they want to pay you for minutes or per hour, ways that do not meet the proper standards set by AIC for those who are conference interpreters. I had a situation in which a client who I had worked before strung me along for 3 weeks, never sent me the material, never sent me the contract, and 4 days before the event says, oh, the client's only paying so much. He had already told that to the other 6 people I referred her to. They all pulled out. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't work for it either. And I pulled out. Now, I didn't know that. However, the chain of emails that we had exchanged in court can be construed as a contract. So I could have asked her for my payment. I didn't know that. So be careful with the way people are dealing business nowadays, because sometimes we're getting burnt for lack of knowledge. I do not know if in the Bahamas, a chain of emails is considered a document or not, but in the US it is. And that's another thing I always do. If I get a phone call from Miss Dorset saying, I'm going to need your service on such a day, blah, 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 and I tell her what my rate is and everything, I always send her an email confirming our conversation. Thank you, Ms. Dorset, for contacting me. As we discussed, these are my terms, blah, 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 blah. And I'm very happy that you have accepted my terms or whatever, that we are going to be working together. Or I can end it by saying, your positive response to this email will construe a contract. That will be our agreement.
So when you're saying be careful, I'm going back to the example that you just used. You said that you had previously worked with the client, so therefore you had some kind of trust. So you didn't
Yes,
think that that event would have happened. So you're saying be careful from the beginning, no matter who you're working with.
exactly. Thank you. Exactly that. No matter who you're working with, you have to be careful. You're a business. You don't need to be registered to be a business in most places. But that's what you are. You're a professional. And you need to be careful with the different scenarios that present themselves. And be very careful with what you commit yourself to delivering and how you do so. You need to meet your responsibilities. You need to be aware of your rights, but most of all, your responsibilities. Learn, study, apply yourself as much as possible. I am taking 3 courses this year. I've been doing this for 42 years. I'm signed up for the Innovation in Translation Summit that starts next week. I just took another course on interpreting last week. We never burn ourselves from learning as long as we know how to do so. And again, thank you so very much for your commitment to this profession. We need more professionals who are committed, who want to have a clear view of the path ahead of them so that they can be the best professionals they can. We need people like that. Thank you for being here. Miru, you have the floor.
Thank you.
You need to unmute your microphone.
Gracias, Gio. Thank you very much. Yes, this was an awesome seminar. I hope everybody else agree with me. Very interesting and always enlightening. And it is true that we never stop learning, basically. This is a profession, as I always say, that really depends on accumulation of knowledge. You never know what your presenter or speaker will say that was probably unforeseen. And you have to pull knowledge out of the back of your head to deliver the right message. And sometimes you have to be creative and bring peace in the middle of a situation that kind of develops, because not bring peace as you are there to be a judge, but because maybe an expression was said, like I mentioned to you before, that means no harm in the other cultural context, and then delivering the correct interpretation for that specific situation can avoid,
Yes.
anything from developing.
Yes.
This was very interesting, and it is very important that we observe what we've learned today, because while self-preservation should always come first, we have to learn to work with other colleagues. We have to learn to collaborate. And we also have to learn when we may be or may not be the best person to complete a job, an assignment.
Yeah.
So you don't have to say no once you have a cohort to rely on. But if you have nothing to rely on, it's okay to refer someone else. And that in that way, you will always be known as a person to go to, because you either can do it or you know how to do it, or who and in what manner it can be done.
Exactly.
Then you know how to get the job done then. Even if you can't do it yourself, you know, you have the resources behind you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I could tell you that for my personal experience, that one of the things that really grounded me to the market in the language industry is the fact that clients know that I will get it done.
Yes.
You know, it could be by way of, they don't know if it is myself, they just know the Bahamas translators will do it. The Bahamas translators means that maybe an Arabic into English translator in Mesopotamia is sitting down doing the translation. that Geo in the US is completing the translation and is being certified locally. It means that we have resources and that we can work with all the colleagues that we have identified to be suitable for the job. And that's what this seminar is about. Like I said to you in the first session, treat each session as a business meeting.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of your business as an interpreter, and you learn. This is just like being already a professional, and that you're going to a refreshing course, only that this time you are learning it for the first time. But just treat it like that, feel it in, like getting your interpreter clothes, feel it, getting your professional skin, because once you believe it, it's easier for you to attain it.
Yes.
Okay. You do have information in your Canvas instructor in your virtual classroom. Geo gracefully provided all of that information for you. So most of the items in the presentation are there. You will have the recording later. Both recordings will be converted and shared with you. And then now that is the weekend, you will see your assignments. As I mentioned to you, we prefer to post assignments during the weekend, so you have the week to complete them, and then they will be due by Thursday. That way we know exactly what to add or how to improve the seminars on Saturday, okay? So as you can see, on Thursdays, we are more lecture mode. On Saturdays, we are going to be doing more of an interactive mode and more practical, so that you can gain more experience as you learn. And with that said, I'm not sure if anyone else wants to say anything.
Yes, I had a question.
Yes.
I wanted to know, so if I was working for someone at a conference, I was working for a particular company, and I no longer work with that company, but I met someone there while I was interpreting. So now a year has passed, and that person approaches me for a job. Am I still obligated to tell my prior employer, or would I be free to do that on my own?
Well, generally, LSPs are very smart when they construe their contract. And they normally will have a clause, or we all normally have a clause pertaining to that. However, as a professional, how do you feel about going on your own, or perhaps being generous to share some information with whoever gave you that first opportunity? Because going on your own without at least mentioning something can make it seem as if all this time you were gathering information from clients to go on your own and you're still in some business, right? So it also depends on the relationship that you have or had with your ex-LSP and the terms under which you no longer work with them. So you have various scenarios there, but what I would do, I would probably, if I have a good relationship with the LSP and I already became my own business, I would have informed in writing to the LSP that I will no longer be available to work as an individual. However, as a company with the yada, yada, yada brand, you can feel free to approach me to work in the future, right? So I would have done that. So I wouldn't be in that scenario without that covering. Now, if I did that, it's okay for me to go ahead because I've already ended the ties with the LSP on a good note. I'm not burning my bridges. And, they know in any event, I could always go solo. All right. Now, Gio, you have anything else to add to that?
Yes, most LSPs will have in their contract a clause that says that you cannot compete with them for a number of years, meaning you cannot approach any of their clients or accept any solicitation from any of their clients for a certain number of years, usually 3 years here in the US. I do not know what the practice is in the Bahamas, but yes, there is that issue. So I worked for Mirut here for until last year. And I looked at our contract, and our contract says that for 5 years, I cannot accept any business offers from any of their clients. So I need to be careful. If one of their clients approaches me and our relationship developed from that event when I met their client through Mirurgia, I am obligated by contract to refer to Mirurgia. I cannot take the job.
Question on that.
Yeah.
I completely understand that scenario that you met the client while you were working for them. So if they were to pick up a client after your contract has ended with Bahamas Translators, and they picked up a client, let's just say the client wasn't pleased with their service and they contacted you, does that still come into play in the clause?
Yes. They can come
Okay.
after you. Bahamas Translators in this case can come after you and say, no, you ain't breach a contract because you cannot accept 4 or 5 years any contact from our clients. Will Deja is trying to ask a question. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is, are you allowed to work independently and also for a company at the same time? Obviously, once the clients aren't the same to cause a conflict of interest.
Oh, yeah. I do that all the time.
Okay.
Now, I wanted to give you another scenario in which something like that literally happened. We were bidding for a conference, a very big conference. And in one of the communications, I would have copied our equipment provider, but unfortunately, and then I learned to do blind copies for, it doesn't matter who in the future. The company went ahead and contacted our equipment provider directly. So they said they will not hire us in the Bahamas. They want the provider in Timbuktu. And if not, neither the Bahamas Translators nor them will get the job. Of course, that was a strategy to get the Bahamas out of the picture. So that company has a very good relationship with us because we buy a lot of equipment from them. So they were not going to lose the opportunity of the equipment. So what they did is they went ahead and provided the service. And then we would have gotten, let's say, like 10% of the contractual agreement, just to put a number. What they did is they provided whatever the profit would have been in equipment to us.
Oh, wow.
So
Like a referral fee.
like a referral fee, precisely. So
Nice.
they say, hey, listen, this is the situation and this is what we had to do. And we met, they were trying to reach me. They couldn't find me at the time to make the decision, but we dropped an email to you. I saw the email and then I was confused. That's why I called. And they said, no worries. The equipment will already be in the Bahamas, because it's going to be used. After that, you just bring your technical team, collect the equipment, you X amount, sanitize it, and that is part of your next sale. Like whatever purchase I was getting ready to approve with our team, they said, you know what? You go ahead and you don't have to pay this, that specific amount. So it's very important to keep a good relationship. Relationships go a long way because when you develop a reputation as a backstabber, nobody hires you.
No. Yeah.
Nobody hires you.
I have been contacted directly by someone's client, a company's client. And the person was really in a hurry, very worried. And I said, look, I am available, but let me get back to you. And I contacted the company I had met the individual through, and I explained to them, your client has contacted me for blah, da, 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 da. I told them I am available, but I had to check with you first. That company got upset with me. Can you believe it? I didn't accept the job or anything. I contacted them to tell them their client was coming to me, and they still got upset.
They probably thought that you were giving false information, that you went after the client. Some people get jealous.
You know, maybe I should have said, thank you so very much, but if you need my services, since you contacted me through ABC, contact them and ask them to hire me for the service. You know, but I didn't say, yes, I'll do the job. I said, I am available, but I need to check with them first. And I went to them. I have other companies who always give me their client information. Always, they're always giving me their client information because they know I got the client through them. I will not accept a job directly from that client. That's the type of relationship I have with my clients. And it's a very good, strong relationship that I'm very happy. You know, after 42 years in this business, you have your relationships, your reputation to rely on. And then comes your colleagues, comes your knowledge, comes your experience. But first of all, your reputation. That's number one. If that dies, doesn't matter how good or how bad you are. Nobody will trust you.
Yes, that's correct. Another incident in the Bahamas, for example, sometimes a client will contact you. What you don't know is that they are contacting others at the same time, right? So they ask you to send a quote. And in many occasions, they use you to create a budget for the event. So you have to be very careful with that. We're giving I give free quotes. Giving a free quote does not guarantee you getting a job. So you have to be very careful and understand if the same client comes to you a couple of times asking for quotes and they never deliver a contract, then you know.
Yeah.
And it happens a lot. So what I have learned in the 17 years that officially the company has been formed providing services for AV is that when a client comes directly to us from abroad, I ask, we do have a form. So how do you hear from us? Or on a phone call or on an email. I need to know how they got to us. Oh, I found you on Google. Oh, I found you here. Oh, so and so gave me a referral. So many times hotels tell them, many times the same AV companies, after they get frustrated with their request of discounts, they say, you know what, we can handle, hey, Hernandez, this one, they might contact you, you deal with them. So,
yeah, sorry. What you said is absolutely true, and it happens a lot. You're talking before as being a reference to others. And just Thursday night at 9 p.m. Miami time, I got a call through LinkedIn from a colleague in Canada who needs 350 receivers here in Miami. And I had a guy, I know 2 companies that could have done that for them. So I immediately put them in contact with those 2 companies. And one of them was awake still. So I talked to him and I put the 2 of them in contact. I do not know what happened, but those people in Canada contacted me to help them do something here in Miami. I had never worked with them as an interpreter, but the president of the company is a colleague of mine. So this is the type of thing that happens when you create a persona, when you have a reputation, when you are considered a trustworthy individual, respectable individual. Okay, so if we are done, we are about 13 minutes ahead, past our time here. So if we are done, Mirurgia, are we done?
I believe so. If there are no more questions on the floor.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Gio, thank you so much for such a wonderful seminar. Class, thank you again for your commitment. Please do go over your material in your virtual classroom. And we will see you on Thursday at 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye.
I'm gonna send you a message, okay? I just want you to check your phone.
Sure.
Okay.
Bye-bye.